Alright, my super fam, welcome back to another video regarding Skirk discussion a bit. Now, I've seen that many of you have been discussing or talking about the weapons that Skirk may be potential use, because many of us obviously won't be able to actually get her signature on her release. So we're going to be having a bit of tier list weapon ranking on all of the possible weapons that she will be able to use and see how good of the weapon you have on the account will be on this specific tier list. Now, obviously, first of all, some of the information regarding Skirk obviously is unofficial, so take all of that with a grain of salt. And since this is my personal tier list, it's based on my recommendation and opinions. Obviously, I have been doing some research to obviously try and give you a good and accurate basic tier list depending on the information that we've got. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be your choice and your decision to whether or not use the weapons that you have. Skirk is going to be finally coming, and I know that many of you are excited for her. So if you're planning to swipe for pooling, then don't forget to check out Lootbar. If you know me, I've been recommending you guys Lootbar before, since you can always save almost a 25% on all of your top-ups. With over 100,000 orders and so many good reviews at this point. And by the way, this also applies to PS5 and Xbox user who can place orders through Lootbar. You can be sure that Lootbar is trustworthy. Here you can see my order receipts of all of my top-ups that I have done. And for those who are going for the highest package when topping up, there's also a limited discount options available once every version. So guys, be sure to check out Lootbar through the link in my description, as it can be a great way for you to save your money, especially if you are topping up a large amount. So first off, we have the Skirk signature. Obviously it's going to be on S tier. I technically think that this is going to be on the separate tier because it is a weapon made for her. None of the other weapon will be able to come close to it, with obviously the recent adjustment of it being a 22% crit rate has basically given it a decent stat ratio in terms of crit rate building, because now it's a little bit harder for her to cap out her crit rate, and especially with base attack increase, I think overall it's a nice increase for Skirk's signature. Next up, we have the Haran. Now, if you don't remember what the Haran does, it gives you a 33% crit rate with basically a 12% elemental damage bonus and a very good increase into normal attack. Now, if you look into Skirk overall kit, technically speaking, she'll be able to use all of these passive, which is really good. However, the downside of the Haran right now is that it gives a little bit too much crit rate. Cryo character tend to have a lot of crit rate being on the team already, so even though this is going to be a nice weapon obviously, however, I don't think many of us are going to be having access to this unless you actively pulled on Ayato weapon banner or you're pulling for the Haran in this Chronicle Wish banner. So for the Haran, I'll be giving it on a B tier. Mist Splitter, right, 44% crit damage, 12% elemental damage bonus, and quite a lot of elemental damage bonus on top of if you do have the stack. Now, if you look into it, Skirk is one of the other characters that can make use of all the 3 stack on Mist Splitter really well, because first of all, always her elemental energy is going to be less than 100% because she doesn't use elemental energy. Her normal attack always deal elemental damage, and of course she uses her elemental burst. On top of that, it has a crit damage, really nice as well. Good base attack. So for that, Mist Splitter is going gold on the A tier. Primordial Jade, 44% crit rate, way too high. HP increased by 20% with attack bonus from the Wilder max HP. Well, yes, she can use the HP increase from Jade Cutter, but obviously this is just a basic bonus. Possibly if you have HP increase from your artifact substats. Other than that, crit rate is a little bit way too high. So even if it is a 5-star weapon, she can use it, but for me personally, Jade Cutter is going to go on a C tier. Also, I kind of forgot that there should be another row because this one should be a D tier. Next, we have the Calamity of Eshu. This is a recent event sword that hopefully you guys already have access to, because generally speaking, it gives 27% attack, and other than that, if you are protected by a shield, then your normal charge attack is increased by a 20%. That's at R1. Now if you do have an R5, which if you have the event weapon, you should have this, that's going to be a 40% normal charge attack with their crit rate increased by 60%. Overall, if you have a shield for Skirk, this weapon will be one of her best weapon in terms of free to play, but not only that, the overall weapon values in the weapon tiers as well. So I am going to be ranking this on an A tier, honestly, because if you do have a shield, you don't have any other good 5-star weapon for her, then I will generally recommend you to use the issue on your Skirk. But obviously, if you don't have a shield, that's always going to be down at the bottom tier because you're not going to be having any of the passive given to her anyway. So if you're using this, you don't have any other good free-to-play options, try to have a shield on your Skirk team, and this weapon is going to be really good. Other than that, we have the Absolution, another sword that has 44% crit damage, and as well you have an extra 20% crit damage, so basically a 60% crit damage. An overall very good weapon because yes, it is not crit rate, but obviously she's not going to be using the whole passive of the Absolution. So honestly speaking, you're just going to be having an extra 60% crit damage given to your Skirk whenever you're having the Absolution. So from the look of it, comparing to the Mist Splitter, the Absolution is technically going to be less good. And honestly, from the popularity of the Absolution across many of the counts, I don't think you guys have access to this a lot. So I'm going to be giving it on the B tier for now. Summit Shaper, right, attack increase, and you technically would love to have a shield to get the maximum passive. Well, you don't need a shield to get the passive because you can already have like a 20% attack increase regardless if you're having a shield or not. But wow, if you want the maximum, you still want a shield. But overall, this thing gives a little bit way too much attack, so generally speaking, it's not a needed. Still, Skirk can make use of it, but for the ease of gameplay and while technically you do require yourself a shield, I'm going to be giving it on a C tier. Uraku is going to be next. Crit damage for an 88%, which is rather nice. Other than that, you also have her 16% normal attack increase. However, most of the remaining passive like elemental skill damage increase, and you are required to have, you know, a Geo character to deal Geo damage to get, you know, an extra 16% normal attack increase. I think this is just an okay sword if you do have access to it, and not to mention, I don't think many of you actually have the Uraku, because why would you go ahead and try to get the Uraku unless you just lost to it on a weapon banner pools? So overall, even though the crit damage is good, you're not going to be able to make use of the passive too much unless, I think this will work if you have a Shilonen on your team, because while obviously Shilonen is going to be able to deal geo damage for you, that is when you're going to be able to make more use of the passive. If that's the case, then I think it's going to be on the B tier. But most of the time, Skirk is going to be safe on a freeze team, which is only Hydro and Cryo, which makes it this weapon to be having a lot less value, which is why I'm going to be giving it on a C tier for now. Other than that, we have the Finale of the Deep. I'm going to be assuming that you have an R5 of this weapon, as it is a craftable weapon. 27.6% attack increase is nice. You're going to be having a 24% attack increase on top of that. And other than that, the part with the Bond of Life, you will be able to technically make use of it as well, from what I can see. So overall, the Finale of the Deep focuses on increasing her attack quite a lot, and you will have to focus rather on building your crit ratio to a higher level. However, from the fact that this is one of the few only free-to-play weapons that you've got access to that is rather good, I'm still going to be giving this a rather nice value of giving it on an A tier, as many of the 5-star options that we've been discussing, I don't think many of you guys have access to it, and rather the free-to-play options are probably the ones that you've got access to the most, which is why it is sitting on an A tier for me for the current point. Up next, we have the Foliar Incision. Now, this weapon may be a little bit more popular because in the past, many of you might have already invested into Alhaitham. 88% crit damage is really nice, a nice slightly 4% crit rate increase, but other than that, you do have your normal attack increase depending on your elemental mastery. Now, even though in the free team, yeah, you're not going to be using EM that much, so it's only going to be a slight bonus. But considering that you are having a nice crit damage increase, a bit of crit rate, and quite an easy access to a bit of normal attack increase as well, for now I'm going to be having the Foliar Incision on a B tier if you do have access to the use of it. Splendor of Tranquil Water, apart from the fact that you get a really nice crit damage increase, Skirk won't be able to make use of the passive because it's all regarding elemental skill damage and HP increase here and there. So yeah, this is one of the worst weapon for Skirk for the current point, so it's going to the D tier. Now, for the Black Sword, obviously I am definitely not going to be recommending you to try and get this weapon just for Skirk specifically, but if you do have this already on your account, a 27% crit rate is decently good. Other than that, you do have her normal charge attack increase as well, and that's at an R1. I'm assuming if you've already got the Black Sword before, you guys should probably have at least to an R3 or an R5 level. For a 40% normal attack increase is honestly a pretty decent choice, and this is only worth considering if you have access to the Black Sword on your account already. Now, not to mention, you also get the ability to heal Skirk herself whenever you score a critical hit, which is something that, well, generally you're going to be getting. This is rather good if you're running on a Marchose set on your Skirk, because, well, if you do heal, then you trigger the Marchose set, even though, you know, I don't think she needs healing, as you're probably going to be having her on Escoffier team as well, but it is going to be a pretty nice addition. And from the look of it, honestly speaking, this is only worth considering if you do have it. If you do have it at R5, I am going to be giving this on an A tier, as it's rather pretty good for a 4-star sword that you can maybe able to get access to, and it's actually not too hard to get access to if you really want it. Now, Blackcliff Longsword is also a pretty interesting option. You do have a 36% crit damage increase. Yeah, you only get this sword from the weapon store. If I remember correctly, this is very hard sword to get, apart from the fact that you have to spend star glitter to get it. Now, you get a decent attack increase, and it does stack up to a 3 stack, but you do need to defeat the opponent. So this is only good whenever you're up against multiple wave enemies, and it's absolute shit if you're up against a solo boss situation. I don't think many of you have access to this as well, and it really sucks when up against solo boss enemies, especially when the current Abyss many of the time only have 1 or 2 bosses. This is going on to a D tier for me. And then we have the Harbinger of Dawn at an R5, giving you basically a 47% crit damage and a 28% crit rate if you have your HP above 90%, which I think it's going to be the case most of the time because Escoffier actually heals you pretty well. However, from the fact that this is only a 3-star option, most of you are going to be using it just when you are at the start of the game and you don't have access to the other free-to-play weapons, right? We already know that there's going to be Eshu as well as the finale of the Deep. Therefore, honestly speaking, I'm going to be having this on a D tier as well. Most of you should just be going with the finale of the Deep anyway. So guys, I think those are going to be my weapon ranking for Skirk at the current point, and based on all of the information that we've just got. Obviously, it is unofficial, and Skirk information will change on official release, and this will probably move around when she releases as well. But I think from all the information we've got, this is going to be a rather decent tier list for you guys to consider. So leave it down in the comment section if you guys have any question or discussion points. I always love to discuss with you right there. Again guys, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on my future Genshin videos. With that, I wish you a super day, and I'll catch you on my next video.